2022, applicant David Shoemaker and Mr. David Ellin. This segment will run like our initial forum segment this evening, where each candidate will be provided 3 minutes for an introduction and opening statement. We will then move on to our question segment of the evening, where each candidate will answer the same question, alternating which candidate goes first. Each candidate will provide 2 minutes to answer the question. After that, each candidate will have the opportunity to have a 1 minute follow-up or rebuttal to that same question. At the end of the segment, each candidate will be provided 3 minutes for closing remarks and a statement to the audience. With that, we'll move on to opening statements. I conducted a random drawing. David, you will lead us off this evening with your introduction and opening statement.
All right, Scott, thank you very much. I'd like to thank everyone for turning out here tonight. We had a better crowd when we first started, when Dan Cox was here, but through attrition, we still have some people though. My name is David Ellin. I'd like to ask everyone in the room, does everyone here know what the state's attorney does? Okay, because I have a lot of people, they ask me, well, you're running for state's attorney, but you're in Carroll County. So what does that mean? And I said, well, it's really a bit of a misnomer. So state's attorney is really district attorney, which you hear about in a lot of other jurisdictions. If you watch Law and Order, you see that the district attorney's office, that's what the state's attorney's office does, is that the state's attorney is the chief prosecutor in Carroll County. There's 24 jurisdictions in Maryland, and the state's attorney is one person out of 24, but it's the one person for Carroll County. So you're probably asking, why am I running for state's attorney? Well, first of all, I am the only candidate running that's actually done the job before. I'm a former felony narcotics prosecutor in Baltimore City. I did over 40 jury trials as a prosecutor, also in the felony narcotics unit, in the juvenile unit, in the misdemeanor jury unit, and in district court. So I'm very familiar with the court systems, both from a civil and from a criminal standpoint. I have a 12-year-old and a 9-year-old. They're both in Carroll County Public Schools. I'm not running for school board, but that would have been helpful with the last segment. I've been voted by my fellow attorneys as a super attorney every year since 2009. I've now been practicing for 25 years. It took a little while to go from 1997 up to 2009 to get that super lawyer status. Now, maybe super lawyer like state's attorney may not know what that is. It is an award that only 5% of attorneys ever get. And I've gotten that every single year since 2009. I also have recovered over $100 million for my clients. I do mostly civil practice now. And I have a lot of clients that are severely injured, traumatic brain injury. These are people that need care for the rest of their lives. And they trust me and my office to do that for them. One of the things that I would like to do, one of the number one things I'd like to do when elected as state's attorney, is to implement Veterans Court to service our 12,000 veterans that we have here in Carroll County. Everyone here like veterans? Yeah. All right. There are over 400 veteran courts in our country. And so far I've received, and also as far as endorsing Veterans Court, we've received over 23 endorsements, including one from the former Secretary of Veterans Affairs, who supports Veterans Court, Gold Star Mothers, Blue Star Mothers, the American Legion, and a host of other different organizations. So you want someone that has trial experience. I've done over 100 jury trials between both being a prosecutor and doing civil cases. I represent my clients well, and I intend to represent the citizens of Carroll County well.
Thank you, David.
It takes me 3 minutes to say hello the way I draw words, but let me say for the last 25 years, I've represented the folks of Carroll County in one elected office after another, starting as a Hampstead Town Councilman, then as Mayor of Hampstead, a term as County Commissioner. In the last 8 years, I've been in the Maryland House of Delegates. In serving in several of those roles, I've overseen significant budgets and overseen substantial numbers of employees. As a member of the Maryland House of Delegates, I've got to tell you, I've been a leader down there in prosecuting the case against soft-on-crime criminal coddling, which has been going on down there for the last several years now. And nobody has to guess whether or not I'm a conservative. I got to tell you, I have a track record to prove it. And that's why my Republican colleagues in the House of Delegates elected me their minority whip this year, making me the #2 Republican in the Maryland House of Delegates. And that's why CPAC gave me a 96% conservative score for my voting record. It's even 2% higher than Dan Cox, who was here earlier. For almost 30 years now, for almost 30 years now, I practice law. And a fair amount of that practice has been dedicated to criminal defense work, where I've handled everything from speeding tickets to homicides. And some of those cases have been fairly high profile. In all my cases, all of them, I've tried to be a zealous advocate for my clients, who've generally been poor or working class folks, come from backgrounds like I did. And I've always sought an outcome for them as the accused that was consistent with the Constitution and laws of this state. In other words, in both the political realm and as an attorney, I've sought justice. Now, that leads me to why I'm running for this particular position. State's attorney's position can't be handed over to just anybody. The individual oversees an office comprised of 20 prosecutors, 32 support staff, making it by far the largest law firm in Carroll County. It conducts about 13 to 15,000 hearings a year, working in tandem with the brave men and women of law enforcement that we have in Carroll County. The state's attorney's office plays a critical role in keeping Carroll the safest county in the state of Maryland. Plain and simple. It's a vital cog in the public safety machine.
David, that's your time.
All right.
Thank you.
See, I told you it takes 3 minutes for me to say all right.
That's why I'm here. All right, let's move on to the question and answer segment of this segment. So, Haven, we're going to start with you. In what situations do you support treating juvenile offenders who commit adult crimes to be treated and tried as adults?
Well, I mean, that's interesting that you bring that up, because there was legislation before the Maryland General Assembly this year which would have ceased that practice. I support trying juveniles as adults when they've committed serious crimes in every instance. There aren't any circumstances in which I would want to see the case remanded to the juvenile court. It should stay in the adult court because they've committed crimes of violence that are adult-type crimes, and they need to be accountable for it.
All right, thank you, David.
Yeah, and actually someone who's actually been a prosecutor and prosecuted juveniles, there's actually a balancing system that you have to weigh things. You have to look at, number one, the seriousness of the charges. You have to look at how close that juvenile offender is to 18. And you have to look at whether or not that juvenile can be reformed in some ways. That's obviously the goal of the juvenile justice system. It's not to punish kids and throw them away and put them in jail. When you get into the adult system, that's when we talk more about punishment. With juveniles, it's more about rehabilitation, if you can do that. If you can rehabilitate a kid, if you can get them on the right path, that's what makes our community strong. And that's why one of the pillars, the foundation really, of my campaign is to get kids over to the courthouse, get them to go over and see Sheriff DeWeese, get them to talk to Judge Titus, get them to see what prosecution is like. Because let me tell you, the more these kids know about the criminal justice system, the less they're going to want to be involved with it.
Right. David, any expansion or follow-up?
Yeah,
1 minute.
what I would point out about that is, you know, it's fine to talk this notion of rehabilitation, but we got to acknowledge that juvenile crime across the state is proliferating. Just a few weeks ago, we saw what happened at Towson Town Center with roving bands of juveniles. Now, if the criminal coddlers in Annapolis had their way, all those folks would be tried as juveniles, despite the fact that they're committing horrific offenses against the general public. We have to stand against that, and I do.
David, final word.
We also have to apply the law. And the law is what it is, and there is a balancing act, and you have to look at the age of the child and the seriousness of the crime, and whether they can be rehabilitated. That's it. I mean, it's a pretty simple standard.
All right, gentlemen, thank you. My next question is drug abuse and overdoses, especially from opioids, thank you, are an issue in Carroll County. How can the state's attorney's office help address this issue? And David, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I can give you a very good example, because since I've never been the state's attorney, although I have been a prosecutor, I said, you know, let me ask someone that's actually done the job before, that's had success with being a prosecutor. So about a month ago, I sat down with Wes Adams. He was the Republican state's attorney down in Anne Arundel County, and when he started, he was telling me about the Safe Stations program that he started. Because if someone is addicted to drugs, and if they do want to get clean, you have about this much time to get them clean. So Safe Stations allows people that if they want to get into rehab, they can go to the fire department. They can go to the police station. They can turn themselves in. If there's a warrant and they qualify, the state's attorney's office will quash that warrant and they can get into drug treatment. And the reason that that's important is that every single person that is in court charged with a drug crime, when that judge says to them, do you want to go to jail or would you like to go into a drug treatment program? Guess what option they inevitably take? They take the option of going into drug treatment, not because they want to get clean, because they don't want to go to jail. So that's why if you get someone that's coming in voluntarily at a safe station and they want to get clean, the success rate is so much higher than someone that is forced to do it so they don't go to jail. And I'm sure we've all heard stories. I've talked with the firefighters, I've talked with deputies, I've talked with state troopers, how they've been out to the same house 6, 7, 8, 9 times to administer naloxone to someone that has overdosed, because they overdose and they get saved and they keep using drugs. So let's stop it. Let's give people an alternative. Let's not force them into drug treatment. Let's take people that want to get clean and help them get clean.
Thank you, David. David, 2 minutes.
All right, so as we sit here today, the opioid epidemic has only gotten worse. It's certainly not gone away. In fact, because of the lockdowns that Dan Cox was talking about earlier, if anything, they've gotten worse. And not only have I seen that in my law practice, frankly, I've seen it in my own family. I believe in and will continue to support preventive education and drug treatment treatment for addicts. However, this is what you need to know. To all those drug dealers out there, whether they're pushing fentanyl or whatever the noxious ware may be, we'll bend over backwards to put you in jail. I'll also say that we have an outstanding outreach person in the Carroll County State's Attorney's Office whose name is Tim Weber. He's a recovering addict and he's written books. He runs the outreach program that's currently in our middle schools and in our high schools here in Carroll County. He does a fabulous job. I've talked to him though that maybe we ought to get kids even younger than that because they're using earlier these days. And he agrees with me. So as state's attorney, we're going to start doing some outreach at the elementary school level, at least by 4th and 5th grade. We got to get a handle on the opioid epidemic in Carroll County.
David, 1 minute all.
I absolutely, this may be the one time I'll agree with Mr. Shoemaker tonight. That's not like the Board of Education hearing with the three of us up here. But I agree, we do need education. Education, education, education. That is how you overcome, and that's how you stop children from even using drugs to begin with. Because once they start, that's a slippery slope. You know, once they take that first joint, once they take that first oxycodone, once they take fentanyl, it doesn't get better, it continues to get worse. Let's educate these children, not just going into the schools. Let's bring them to the courthouse. Let them see what the jail is like. Let them see those people in the orange jumpsuits downstairs, the people that Mr. Shoemaker likes to represent. I don't like to represent criminals. I feel like everyone has the right to be represented, but I don't like criminals, and that's why I don't like to represent them.
David, any final thoughts?
Yeah, that last attack there seems remarkably similar to the attack that Kelly Schultz is running against Dan Cox right now. As a matter of fact, though, I think she has an excuse because she's not a lawyer. Supposedly he is, and he should know better. Because unless you missed school the day they taught law at law school, you should know that the accused has certain constitutional rights, including the right to due process and the right to counsel. So I make absolutely no apologies whatsoever for my endeavors over 30 years to make sure that the accused was treated fairly and constitutionally.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. All right, we're going to move on to my next question. Anyone that read Scotty's blog back in the day has to know that I couldn't get these two on stage and not ask this question. And that is House Bill 692, prohibiting the state's attorney in Carroll County from engaging in private practice of law. Now, this has been a bit controversial between you two candidates for office this election cycle. Delegate Shoemaker, you were part of the delegation that proposed this legislation. This legislation has passed both the House and the Senate, gone to the governor. He will probably not sign it and just let it become law, which is what he does with most local bills like this. But talk about, since it's your turn to go first, talk about why this legislation was proposed and why you feel it's necessary now.
All right, so it's a no-brainer. Look, only 3 jurisdictions in the state of Maryland don't expressly forbid the state's attorney from engaging in the outside practice of law. Us, until now, Garrett County, and Baltimore City, of all places. Now, having said that, the reason why we've not needed a bill until now is because since Tom Hickman was state's attorney in 1990, no state's attorney has engaged in the outside practice of law. In fact, in 1994, when Jerry Barnes was state's attorney, they issued a personnel manual that said no other attorney in the state's attorney's office can engage in the outside practice of law. The job's too big, folks. You know, if you're handling 13,000 to 15,000 hearings a year, and you're supervising 20 attorneys and 32 support staff, you do not have time to have divided loyalties. You can't. That's why every other county in the state, except the 3 I just mentioned, and now we're included in that, have expressly forbade that. It's just common sense. It's insane to think that you can serve 2 masters. You just can't do it in a job that pays $161,000 a year.
All right, thank you. Now, Mr. Ellin, David, you oppose this legislation. Talk about why you oppose this bill.
Well, I mean, I opposed it because it's very clear why Mr. Shoemaker wanted to pass a bill. It was to discourage me from running against him. Now, what he should have done is there's only 2 jurisdictions, there may have been 3 where you had a private practice prohibition. There's only 2 in the state of Maryland where people elected an attorney who had not been a prosecutor before. I think the bill that would have been apropos is that you had to have experience as a prosecutor, not learning on the job, making $161,000. That's the bill that should have been passed. You need experience. And while Mr. Shoemaker, and I'll throw this in because I still have some time left, while he's been down there for 8 years running as a delegate, maybe you should pay your taxes, Mr. Shoemaker, because in 2 times you had to be sued by the state of Maryland while you were making $50,000 as a delegate for not paying your taxes. You and your wife had tax liens put against your house. Yeah, so maybe that 161 would help you. I have it right here, Mr. Shoemaker.
You're absolutely wrong. We had no tax liens put against our house.
You know what? I'll publish it on my Facebook page later for everyone to see. And also the judgment in Garrett County that you have against you. And also one against St. Agnes for not paying your medical bills.
There's not a judgment in Garrett County.
Yeah, there is. I have it right
You want
here.
to talk about your vast prosecutorial experience?
Yeah, over 40 jury trials as a prosecutor.
You want to talk about it? Let's talk
Hang
about
on,
it.
hang on, gentlemen.
Go ahead.
David, are you done with your statement?
I am done with my statement.
All right, Haven, 1 minute.
Let's talk about his vast prosecutorial experience, because it's not vast, it's really not even half vast, and you got to watch how you say that. He did, and this is from Maryland Judiciary Case Search. Tail of the tape. He did 385 cases in Baltimore City as a prosecutor down there. 5 of those cases were abated by death. He took a few cases to trial, actually. Did 300 pleas. 300 pleas out of 385 cases. That's his vast prosecutorial experience he talks about. In the 20 years since, and it's 2 decades, 20 years since he left the state's attorney's office in Baltimore City, he's done virtually no criminal work since. And he's going to sit here and tell you all that he has vast criminal law experience.
Thank you, Mr.
I think the record speaks for itself.
Thank you, Mr.
Yeah.
All right, Dave, last statement, 1 minute.
I do agree. The experience does speak for itself, because I was doing jury trials 9 months after I was in that office, and I did over 40 of them, Mr. Shoemaker. That's 40 more than you did as a prosecutor.
All right, let's move on to our next question. And I want to talk about, David, you brought up the idea of the topic of Veterans Court needed here in Carroll County. Currently, there are specific veteran treatment courts in Anne Arundel, Baltimore City, PG County, and a regional veterans treatment court serving Dorchester, Somerset, Comico, and Worcester counties. Can you talk about why there is a need for such a system in this county today?
Sure. Speaking of no-brainers, Veterans Court is an absolute no-brainer. It does not cost the citizens of Carroll County one tax dollar. I feel like the people that have served our country, that we owe them something and we should serve them. There's a tremendous amount of people that come back from either Iraq or Afghanistan that have PTSD, which leads to substance abuse programs, substance abuse. I feel like they need to get the benefits they deserve. It's administered by both the United Way of Central Maryland and also the VA. So everyone here, I'm sure, has heard from some veteran who said, I've been down at the VA for a year trying to get treatment. I've been at the VA for 18 months. Well, what Veterans Court does is it gets rid of the red tape. You have someone in that courtroom from the VA who's going to get that veteran the treatment that they need, whether it's substance abuse or whether it's mental health treatment. And I think those people deserve it, and we're going to implement it here in Carroll County without $1 cost to the citizens of Carroll County.
Haven, do you support the establishment of the Veterans Court in the county at this time?
I tell you what, one of the things that I would have to do is, and it's one of the things that he should have done before he floated the idea, is actually talk to Judge Hecker, who's the administrative judge for Carroll County, who would be tasked with the responsibility of implementing a Veterans Court. Now, I'm the one up here who actually is a veteran. And I have fought for veterans throughout my political career, including as county commissioner and setting up the Veteran Shuttle Program. We were the first county in the state to do that. Getting a Veteran Service Officer, we were the first county in the state to do that, to help veterans get the benefits and treatment that they need. At the state level, I fought consistently for tax relief, exempting military retirement income from state income taxes. We just raised it this year, by the way. We raised the exemption, so our veterans get a little more break on their tax relief, believe it or not, even coming from Annapolis. But I got to tell you, one of the things I do know about veterans, and I know that because I am in 3 different veterans organizations right here in Carroll County. Thankfully, our veterans don't commit crimes, typically. In fact, you can ask Sheriff DeWeese, You know, recently I asked him, how many veterans you have over at the detention center, Sheriff? He said 4 out of 160 inmates. Our veterans don't commit crimes. However, if Judge Hecker can implement a veterans court, if he can administer a veterans court over there, given the limited resources that the Circuit Court for Carroll County has, yeah, I'm all in.
All right, David, 1 minute follow-up.
So, when Mr. Shoemaker was talking about the 13,000 cases, let's talk, those are hearings. We have about 5,000 cases in district court, criminal cases, about 1,200 in circuit court. What I'd like to do is start off with district court where you have 5,000 cases. Now, Sheriff DeWeese doesn't ask people when they come in whether they're a veteran or not. But when you have veterans court, guess what? You do. And they put a big V on your paperwork to indicate that you are a veteran, and then they can send you over to veterans court to see if you qualify. I would be curious, what is your definition of a veteran, Mr. Shoemaker? And do you feel that you qualify as one?
Okay, wait, I'm asking the questions here tonight.
All right, we'll get to that later then. Veterans Court is an absolute no-brainer. I've represented 3 veterans in Carroll County in the last 6 weeks. And these are people that have had criminal offenses. They were never asked when they were arrested if they were a veteran. So I think whether it's 4, whether it's 10, or whether it's 20, our veterans deserve it.
Thank you, David. Haven, you get the final word on this.
Yeah, I will follow up on that, since he attacked my status as having worn a uniform, which is something he's never done. I'll tell you that I have an honorable discharge hanging on my wall, and I'm telling you that the Maryland Motor Vehicle Administration allows a veteran's designation on my driver's license, and I had to show them proof. So, you know, ask them if you disagree.
Okay, gentlemen. Let's move on to my next question. And Haven, we will start with you. In what situations would you recommend alternatives to prison and sentencing persons convicted of crimes?
Well, I don't think I would recommend alternative sentencing for folks who are engaged in violent offenses. Obviously, if it's a low-level drug user, there has to be alternative pathways to get that person help. But, you know, hardened criminals should not have alternatives to jail. That's plain and simple.
Dave?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on, number one, on what the crime is, and also what the person's record is. You have to look at the totality of the circumstances. It's an important decision to make when you levy criminal charges against someone, and also what punishment you're going to be recommending to a judge. So I think you need to weigh everything. Clearly, there are instances where alternative sentencing is appropriate, but if it's a violent crime and if the person has a lengthy criminal record, then no, it's not appropriate. They deserve to be in jail.
Hey, wait. Is that everybody?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, folks. Lost my place here. I think, David, you get the next question to start off.
All right.
Will you work to ensure that your office cooperates with Department of Homeland Security, DHS, and especially Immigration and Customs Department's ICE in enforcing federal immigration policy to the fullest extent possible under the law?
Absolutely. As the state's attorney, you have to enforce the laws that are on the books. We don't make the laws. That's not our decision. In Baltimore City, Marilyn Mosby decided that she wasn't going to prosecute marijuana crimes anymore. That's not her decision to make, whether she agrees with that or not, which clearly she does. The legislative people make the laws. Okay, like someone like Mr. Shoemaker down at the House of Delegates, they're the ones that make the laws. The state's attorney doesn't. The sheriff's department doesn't. We're tasked with enforcing those laws. So if the law is broken, we have to look at it and we have to prosecute. I'd also work with HIDA. There's a bunch of different federal agencies that I would work with, and agencies that I have worked with as a prosecutor, including being sent down to the Department of Justice College to be trained to be a better prosecutor. That's something that you only get to do when you've actually done the job. So yes, I would work with those law enforcement agencies. I would ensure that the laws are upheld in Carroll County, and I would make sure that people that break the laws are held accountable for them.
I would cooperate with ICE and the federal immigration authorities completely. I fought against sanctuary state legislation at the state level in Annapolis year after year after year. There are attempts to rescind the 287G program in like Frederick County and Worcester County. We fought that back. You know, he is right about one thing. You know, we are bound to uphold the law of the land, and that's all the law of the land, irrespective of what your philosophical viewpoint is on that particular law. You have to uphold the law. You can't be Marilyn Mosby and pick and choose which laws you want to enforce and which you won't. So, absolutely, one of the first calls that should be made would be to check on immigration status for darn near everybody, just out of an abundance of caution. So, yeah, that's my answer.
Thank you, David. David, any follow-up?
I certainly hope you're not suggesting checking people's papers, Mr. Shoemaker, because we do have to uphold the Constitution.
David, any final words?
No. No.
Okay. All right, next, David, we're going to start with you. How will you address the problems of domestic violence that happens in the county?
Well, I mean, I know for a fact that the Carroll County State's Attorney's Office has a very effective special victims unit over there that does a very capable job, because I've seen it firsthand, of dealing with victims of domestic violence, and I certainly support that program and its continuation.
Excellent. Dave?
Yeah, I would certainly, that's actually, if you look at my palm card, that's one of the things that I feel very strongly about is domestic violence. I've actually prosecuted domestic violence cases. I've put people in jail for committing domestic violence. And I think that there are a lot of women out there that are afraid to come forward. We need to be more welcoming so that when there are legitimate cases of domestic violence, when someone is trapped in their house, and if they're not working and the husband controls the means and the finances, that they have to have the ability to be able to come to the courthouse, talk with someone, and feel safe. And the person that was committing the domestic violence, that person's going to be prosecuted accordingly.
David, any follow-up?
I agree.
We've talked about a lot of issues today in the various questions I've given you. I'm curious, what are your priorities outside of the things we've already talked about, things maybe we haven't talked about in running for this office? And I believe we're starting with David this time.
Sure. Some of the things I'm going to rehash, but Veterans Court obviously I think is something that we absolutely need to do. It's a no-brainer. It doesn't cost us anything. We help our veterans. Expand the programs for domestic violence. Help the people that are victims of domestic violence. We want to get into the schools. Bring the children over to the courthouse, to the jail. Let them see what the criminal justice system is like, because not only are they less likely to commit crimes if they know what the system is like, they may want to be involved. They may want to become a deputy sheriff. They may want to become a state trooper. They may want to run for sheriff one day. They may want to become a lawyer. So when you expand their horizon and you educate these children, you just give them more opportunities and more food for thought. Also, drug treatment. We talked a little bit about this earlier, is that obviously there's some people that can use treatment, there's some people that cannot use treatment. That's why I think safe stations, when you get someone who's ready to get clean, you have that much time, you get them. You get them into a treatment program, because I'm sure everyone here knows someone, has someone in their family that has been addicted to drugs. And that doesn't mean that we throw the person away. Carroll County has a lot of people that are recovered addicts, including Tim Weber, who works with the State's Attorney's Office. So just because someone has a drug problem, it doesn't mean that we give up on them. That's not what the Bible says. We do not give up on people. We keep fighting for them. And when you can help them, you do the right thing and you help them.
David, same question.
One of the biggest challenges, of course, that we have in Carroll County and throughout the state of Maryland and throughout the country, actually, is what we've been talking about quite a bit here, and that's the opioid epidemic, plain and simple. I mean, that's got to be has to continue to be a focus of the state's attorney's office in conjunction with law enforcement going forward. The low-level users need to get help. The fentanyl pushers and the dealers need to go to jail. Now, the other thing I would point out is that, you know, there's a staffing issue everywhere right now. And that's probably because, you know, the government has been subsidizing people to essentially not work for a substantial period of time. State's Attorney's Office has that same challenge right now. We've lost some folks to the AG's office because they're able to work from home and they pay more money. So staffing issues will be a serious issue for the next state's attorney. And it's one that, we'll have to tackle for sure, because we have a very competent state's attorney's office in Carroll County. I know firsthand because I've been practicing law here for 30 years and I've dealt with them on a regular basis. We need to keep our competent state's attorney's office that we have in Carroll County to keep all of us safe.
1 minute follow-up.
Agree 100%. We need to keep good people in the state's attorney's office. We have about a $4.5 million budget, more or less, at the state's attorney's office. And I certainly think we need someone that oversees that budget, that pays their taxes, that doesn't get sued for not paying their own taxes. If you can't keep your own house, your own financial affairs in order, how are you going to manage a $4.5 million budget? That's what I'd like to know.
Haven, final words.
All right, so, he's trying to impugn trustworthiness. Let's talk about him for a second. So, he registered as a Republican shortly after moving here, claims to be a hardcore Republican, but he's given money to Stephanie Rawlings Blake, Anthony Brown, and Brian Frosch. Claims to be a hardcore Republican, despite the fact that his campaign wife is an avowed never-Trumper. Claims to be a hardcore Republican, but has said that Joe Biden won the election legitimately. He says that my home state is North Carolina. I have a draw, that's for sure, but I've never lived there a day in my life. He talks about my fat pension. I'm running to fatten my pension. I get $240 for being a Carroll County commissioner and a little over $800 for being a delegate. So if he's going to lie to you about the little stuff, what won't he lie to you about?
All right, gentlemen. That is the last word on that one. Look, we're at that time of night where old people, specifically me, are getting tired, obviously, as you've seen this evening. This gray hair comes honestly. So look, we're going to close with our closing statements. You each have 3 minutes. Haven, we will start with you with your closing statements and why folks should vote for you.
All right, so, just like in a jury trial, I mean, you all have heard the testimony, and you're able to assess the credibility of the witnesses. And now, the decision rests with you. I think a good attorney, particularly a good state's attorney, is one of even keel. If you think my opponent's of even keel, well, maybe we should talk. But the bottom line is this. The state's attorney's job is to work to get the bad guys off the street, plain and simple. In other words, just as the theme song from Beretta went, don't do the crime if you can't do the time. And that's why law enforcement has endorsed my candidacy. And what I mean by law enforcement is I mean the sheriff back there, I mean the Carroll County Fraternal Order of Police, and I mean the current state's attorney, Ellin, they've all endorsed my candidacy because they've seen me in action and they know what I can do. Frankly, though, I want to read this because I want to make sure I get it right. And he's sitting back there, so if I screw it up, he might hit me with his nightstick. The sheriff said, Haven's courtroom experience is second to none. Having been an adversary of his in the courtroom, I would much rather have Haven Shoemaker sitting with me than across the aisle from me. And that's why I want him to be our elected state's attorney. Those endorsements are all great. They mean a lot to me. I appreciate it very much. But the ultimate endorsement is going to come from all of you. So humbly, I ask for your support in July. Thank you very much, and God bless.
David, you get to complete this segment this evening.
Well, thank you very much. While I do like the sheriff very much, and Heather as well, I won't consider myself to be best friends with them, which is why Mr. Shoemaker got the endorsement. How could he endorse someone that's never done the job before? If you guys were on an airplane, would you want someone that's flown the airplane before or someone that's watched the movie Airplane? You want someone that actually has the experience to do the job. Someone who's been recognized by their peers as a super lawyer. Someone who is the attorney for the Republican Central Committee. Someone who is the attorney for the Carroll County Veterans Independent Project. I fight all the time for my clients against big institutions. That's what I do. I help the little person take on big institutions and get them good results. And that is exactly what I am going to do for the citizens of Carroll County on July 19th. And I ask for your vote. Thank you very much.
Gentlemen, thank you for being willing to come out this evening and answer questions. Folks, we'll give them one last round of applause. And I will now turn the show back over to Mercedes.
I just want to thank everyone for coming tonight. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to all the candidates that are here, the ones that we invited to speak. I hope everyone listened and got to know them better. And all the candidates also that are here tonight, please take some time to go and meet them and learn about who they are and what they stand for. These are some important races that are coming up. I also would like to thank our volunteers, everyone who was here tonight to help us set up and who worked tirelessly on this for a couple months. And I'm grateful for all of you. Thank you so much.